Hello, I'm Simon Sellars, author of the short story Sentient, Spamglot, Cheetah Infection From Discovery to Ongoing Review. The story is based on a true incident that happened to me a few years ago. I was spending a lot of time on Twitter when I began to notice the writer Ken Hollings in my timeline. Hollings, a brilliant analyst of digital culture, was tweeting about a certain species of spam bot he'd found on Twitter which he called non-people. What he had to say was weird and intense, but it was shot through with the pealing bells of truth, and I was drawn to it instantly. Hollings drew a correlation between these bots and EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, ghost voices heard in white noise, such as the static from radio and TV, or even the hum from fridges and other household appliances. It was a theory made famous by Konstantin Raudova, and Hollings' hypothesis was that these bots once sold something, but had since escaped from whatever corporate campaign they were shilling, and were now doomed to haunt the Twitterverse, searching, like Raudova's disembodied entities, for real humans to follow and interact with. It may be, Hollings said, that they have somehow replicated themselves, and it is the digital echo of their non-presence that has somehow decided to follow you. This would explain their behaviour, which, however baffling, was indeed observable. A Twitter non-person, Hollings continued, will sometimes attach itself to a conversation you are having with one of your real followers, as if they were somehow hovering on the edge of your exchange, shy but anxious to take part. Now, as I read the post, a dreamlike feeling overwhelmed me. I remembered back to a year before when I was listening to the music of Syd Barrett on heavy rotation. I wanted to know if anyone else was obsessed with Barrett at that particular time, so I searched Twitter for mentions of his name, and what I found was deeply bizarre. A pocket of the network inhabited by bots that were broken in some fundamental way. Here is the weirdest part. The tweets from these bots always included Barrett's name, and for some reason, references to Tobe Hooper's film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These references were see-through cut-up sentences with their own inscrutable logic. If in a former life, according to Hollings, they were in fact pimping a product, they certainly weren't doing so now. These things were selling neither Hooper's film nor Barrett's music, and their bios and tweets linked to no one and nothing, being entirely self-sufficient. As I read more of what Hollings had to say, I understood clearly that I'd already met his Twitter non-people. Hollings said, if you examine their profiles a little more closely, these accounts usually have just 22 tweets, occasionally 20 or 21, but I've yet to see one with more than 22. When I encountered the Chainsaw Barrett bots, it struck me that they were all stuck on 20 tweets. Extrapolating the EVP hypothesis, Hollings wrote, often the tweets take the form of words in unconnected strings, or selections of quotations from established names, but which have been put through some kind of weird syntactic blender, forming themselves into the kind of cryptic arrangement of images that Raudova would have instantly recognised as emanating from another world. On my Barrett search, among the tweets I found from these bots were these, repeated verbatim. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Syd Barrett are raked over. Here's another one. Franklin brought me CD, Syd Barrett. I think it's automatic. Franklin, of course, was the fourth character to be slaughtered in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This was Hollings' weird syntactic behaviour in full effect. Like defective AI, it was as if these bots had managed to break free of human control, but the effort of doing so had fried their code, reducing them to stuttering incomprehensibly into the void, their algorithms torn and frayed. The bots have since vanished. There is no trace of the account names nor their tweets in any Twitter search engine I can find. A few days later, Hollings told me he was now being followed by a bot called Murty Weldy, and that he'd searched for its name online, but the only Murty Weldy he could find was a woman who died in 1868. Most spam bots are affixed to names that are as syntactically blended as their tweets. So why was this one scraping the actual names of the dead? The EVP theory was expanding, and I now had to accept fully the reality of what was before me. Later, Hollings told me that non-people were favouriting his tweets at the rate of around 1 per day. As for myself, I was being actively warned off. The only spam bot that bothered with me during this entire episode was one that tweeted me a line from Kenny Rogers' song The Gambler. The line was this: "You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run." That represented its one and only tweet, and it was aimed at me. I took it as a gentle threat. Naturally, the bot, like all the others, has since disappeared. Fast forward 6 years and my contribution to Insufficient Armour. When I was asked to write something, I immediately thought of this incident because it seemed to speak to the theme of prosthetic implants, especially if you consider Twitter to be a type of prosthesis. Think about it. When we communicate with each other on Twitter, we are really reading each other's thoughts. So I began to imagine, how would the incident I've described play out in the near future when actual brain implants are developed and we can hear voices in our heads that tell us anything we want to know, like Siri, or that translate our friends' messages and communications into technologically enabled telepathic thoughts? What about a world where such brain implants coexist with mixed reality and augmented reality environments? Will Ken Hollings' non-people survive in such a world, or will they evolve into something else? The story you're about to read from me is structured like a report from an academic in the near future who is investigating this phenomenon of digital ghosts, but transplanted into an extrapolated form of social media. So instead of the internet, we have an advanced mixed reality network called the Vex World. And in the Vex World, almost any physical object in the real world is mapped and reproduced as a digital double. Instead of computers and smartphones, we have smart glasses that are invisible on the face and are wired directly into the brain. People can communicate telepathically through these implants and through the vision beamed into their glasses, live wholly within a completely artificial reality. I've written the story in this fake academic style to suggest that it is based on an actual phenomenon that we're witnessing today, and to try and imagine how people might examine and investigate that sort of phenomenon when technology reaches a point where we are completely unable to trust our own senses. And when we do reach that point, I believe that digital hauntings will become more and more common, and that we will reach the point where we encounter an alien intelligence, one that we are completely unprepared for, but that paradoxically we have always known has existed.